The retirement of Senators Dodd and Dorgan raising the chances that Democrats could lose their 60-seat majority in the Senate. So is it full steam ahead to push through their legislation, all of it, before the November elections?
Kiki McLean says not necessarily. Kiki is a Democratic strategist and was a senior advisor for then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. Well, Kiki, you've pointed out many times that these things go up and down. In fact, we had some great financial times when we had a split government with Bill Clinton as head of the executive and a Republican Congress. Are we heading in that direction? If so, maybe Wall Street will be happy.
Well, there are historic trends. You really can only predict the future by looking at history, right? And there are historic trends that say in the first election cycle after a president's elected, his party loses seats. I think this White House, this president, and the congressional leadership have embarked on a very aggressive legislative agenda. I don't think the news of today will change their desire to push on really big key issues like the jobs bill coming up, on climate change legislation. I think that what we're experiencing today is a fluke of scheduling with some retirements. And I don't think this changes the dynamic. I mean, the reality is there are 6 Republican senators who have announced retirement. It's not unusual after a holiday break. People are with their families. They make those final decisions about whether they're really committed to going through another battle, and frankly, if they want to serve in the next 6 years. We ask a lot of these elected officials, as well we should, but they also look up occasionally and say, my family deserves more of my time. They've been away too much. They may have other interests in their life. So I don't think that today's announcement changes drastically any plan in the long haul for the legislative agenda that Democrats are trying to push for.
But Kiki, you don't think that the Democrats in the Senate are looking at the agenda and saying, if we push this through, particularly with health care, Americans do not favor the health care overhaul. They have to look at that and say, will that jeopardize my potential to get reelected or even jeopardize the 60 seats the Democrats have in the Senate? You don't think they're thinking that?
Dagan, first of all, I have to challenge the premise of your question. I don't think Americans oppose health care reform. I think Americans want it. They elected a guy who said he was going to get it for them, and they elected leaders who were working for it. Do I think today, as a result of the announcement from Senator Dorgan and Senator Dodd, that Democrats think much has changed? Not really. In for a penny, in for a pound. The Democratic Senate has pushed forward historically in their effort for health care reform. The danger of losing control of the Senate is no better or worse today than it was yesterday or back in December before the holidays.
Kiki, what I'm interested in is what Chris Dodd wants, because he is a forceful character. He's been there 30 years. Does he want to go out in a blaze with a bill that is stronger than Barney Frank's in the House? It already is. Or is he going to be more likely to compromise, realizing, you know, he's got a couple of years to, after he retires from the Senate, to be seen as a compromiser?
Here's what I think drives Chris Dodd. Health care and who it affects is not a new issue for him. If you look at his career, particularly in his role as a champion for children, right, that's really been the hallmark of his career. I
but
think
I'm
that's
talking
what you'll
finances
see
here. The
him.
financial reform bill is what Wall Street's most interested in.
But financial reform, I think what drives him is his original motivation. What's going to help families be more economically secure? What's going to create opportunity? What happens with health care reform? I think his motivation doesn't change. I think he believes in leadership. I think anybody who's been working on his committee would tell you he has chaired that and led it with integrity and with the right mission. You know, what happens to the conference, as we call it, when both the House and Senate come together to work out the details of a joint bill, are going to be affected by a lot of things. Not anything more or less, again, by what Chris Dodd announced today.
By the way, Kiki, according to the latest Rasmussen poll, 52% of Americans oppose the health care overhaul, with a minority of 42% supporting it. Just by the way, but moving on to finance, do you think the Democrats focus on money in people's pockets and try and push through another stimulus plan?
I think Democrats and I think smart leaders are focused on jobs. You know, we're talking a lot about control of the House and Senate. I actually think the biggest issue, if you're talking raw politics and what people want and what they're looking at in 2010 is really about these governor's races. When you look at economies and jobs, you're looking at governors. But there is a strong commitment across the board from Democrats to focus on jobs and the economy and what we do and getting a jobs bill through. I think that's going to be critical.
Kiki McLean, great to see you, Kiki. Thanks very much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.